From the civil rights movement in the 60s to presidential runs in the 80s to decades of service to underserved in Chicago, Jesse Jackson's name will forever have its place in history. Tonight we get to the point.
From Chicago's very own, with WGN political editor Tamon Bradley, this is The Point.
Good evening. Tonight we remember a titan of civil rights and American politics, and one of Chicago's very own. The Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. died today at 84 years old. Jesse Jackson was born Jesse Louis Burns, October 8, 1941, in segregated Greenville, South Carolina, to a single mother, Helen Burns. She would later marry Charles Henry Jackson, who adopted Jesse as his own.
I was born in the slum, but the slum was not born in me.
Jackson's leadership qualities started to bud as a teenager, finishing 10th in his high school class. He went to the University of Illinois on a football scholarship. After 2 semesters, he transferred to historically black North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. It was the summer of 1960 when Jackson would stage his first act of civil disobedience.
I was 19 years old. I was arrested with 7 classmates. I think when I went to jail the first time, like I was born again. Something happened within me. A fire was lit that never went out, really.
While organizing sit-ins and marches at school, Jackson met his future wife, Jacqueline Brown. They married New Year's Eve, 1962.
I didn't know what he wanted, what he was going to be, but I wanted to be with him as he became whatever he was going to do.
The young couple soon moved to Chicago, where Jackson would study at the Theological Seminary. Next, a chance meeting with the man that would become Jackson's mentor.
I met Dr. King in the airport on the way to get his Nobel Prize.
Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy.
Dr. King asked Jackson to join the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a civil rights organization that used nonviolence to end racial discrimination. The two became kindred spirits in the fight. In 1965, Jackson was marching for voting rights in Selma when his eldest son, Jesse Jr., was born. The time away from his family took a toll.
What's your biggest regret?
I didn't spend some time I wanted to spend with my children. And I had such notoriety at such a young age. To go to a movie, go to a public place, all the attention shifts to me away from them.
One chain store has 12,000 employees.
Reverend Jackson returned to Chicago to head up Operation Breadbasket, but he remained a part of Dr. King's inner circle. In April of 1968, they traveled to Memphis. Jackson was at the Lorraine Motel when shots rang out.
The 45 my determination to do this the rest of my life, and I've not stopped since that day.
Who are they? We just people united. Save humanity.
In 1971, Jackson founded Operation Push, People United to Serve Humanity. The group later merged with the Rainbow Coalition.
We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Jackson changed the American political landscape with his groundbreaking presidential campaigns in 1984 and 1988. Though he never won elected office, Jackson is often credited with expanding presidential politics across racial lines, helping register millions of new voters.
For the first time, women and blacks and Hispanics are being considered seriously, and that's a step forward.
30 years later, tears fell in Chicago's Grant Park as Jackson watched the first black American elected president, Barack Obama, take the stage.
I wish so hard for those who never got the credit for their investment of money, of blood and time could have been there, and so I wept with joy.
After a lifetime of leading the public fight for civil rights, in 2017, Jackson revealed a more private battle for his health. He'd been receiving treatment for Parkinson's disease.
We will find the cure. It is Parkinson's.
But Jackson's work was not done. He continued counseling political candidates, overseeing the expansion of voting rights, and leading protests across the country through the pandemic.
I am somebody. I am somebody.
In 2023, Reverend Jackson announced he'd be stepping away from his job as head of the Rainbow Push Coalition.
We're resigning, we're not retiring, we're not leaving, we're expanding. As long as God gives him strength, he'll keep on fighting for justice.
Please welcome founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
And just a year later, a full circle celebration on stage at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Part of Jackson's lasting legacy, his unending work towards greater equality for all people. That's how he said he wanted to be remembered.
I served as faithful as I could, for as long as I could, make life better for people around me and try to leave an imprint in the sand of times.
Services for Reverend Jackson are expected to be announced soon. Up next, former Mayor Rahm Emanuel and Jackson's political impact. We're back in 1 minute. Jesse Jackson's influence over politics, both at a local and national level, is undisputed. Earlier today, I spoke with former Chicago Mayor and White House official Rahm Emanuel about Jackson's political legacy. Mayor Emanuel, thank you so much for your time. Reverend Jackson and President Clinton became friends. He even became his spiritual advisor. Did they hit it off right away?
Yeah, I mean, look, their friendship had ups and downs and turns in the road like any friendship, but in the end of the day, there was mutual respect. I mean, you talk about, and we all talk in politics, Sister Soldier. There's a history with Reverend Jackson. And when President Clinton gave those comments after a rap singer made comments about killing white people and police officers, and it was done, if my memory serves right, at Operation Push. And so they had a complicated relationship, but at the end of the day, there was a deep amount of respect. And I think President Clinton, and I can tell you one policy when it was coming to the issue of ending affirmative action. It was a move in the late 90s. President Clinton called for not ending it, but mending it. And there was a whole push by Republicans about ending affirmative action. You can fast forward today and talk about that. But and obviously, Reverend Jackson wanted the president to say no. It was the president's wisdom to navigate between what was behind ending it with don't end it, but mend it. And he found what was always Clinton's kind of third way. And I think the Reverend Jackson saw the wisdom of that, both politically and policy-wise, and supported it.
Jackson flirted with starting his own political party, and his rhetoric was quite sharp in the 70s. What do you think it was important that Jackson instead decided to take his message and influence inside the Democratic Party and have those two presidential runs?
I thought his most important message, and I think it's really, really relevant today, was you may have been born in the ghetto, but the ghetto wasn't born in you. Was knowing that you don't give up on an individual and their personal circumstances is not predictive of where they would go and where they could go. So I think that is more important than energizing a party to hear the voices and see the people that are not heard or seen in our daily lives. And he gave power to that.
How did Jackson's run for president open the door for Barack Obama?
Well, so you're saying that, it's interesting you say that about Barack Obama. I would say this is the mayor of me talking, and Chicagoan. There are two people that actually, one, Harold Washington becomes mayor in 1983, had a also not so perfect relationship with Harold Washington. Harold Washington is with Dr. Jackson. Yes, there's no doubt you couldn't have seen a Barack Obama without 20 years earlier, 1988, and I'm in Michigan, where Jesse Jackson took 55% of the vote in the Democratic primary, which I think was one of the big shakeups. But you couldn't see Barack Obama in 2008 without Jesse Jackson in 1988. That said, also they had a complicated relation. So both the mayor of the city and the president of the United States had relationships with Reverend Jackson. He was an important person, but it wasn't exactly a line of absolute 100% unadulterated great friendship, which is true about anybody in politics.
Sure. And lastly, Mayor,
So we shouldn't gussy it up in some way. Look, he and I, we had our own differences, but we always met. He did a blurb for my last book as being mayor that I wrote. We used to meet regularly. When he would text me and say, "I got to sit down with you," we would, come into the 5th floor. We collaborated, we cooperated, we confronted, and we challenged. And he wouldn't have it any other way. And if anybody wants to write it up in some other kind of glossy way, have at it. He was Reverend Jackson in full living color.
Jackson's children are expected to address the media tomorrow. Before we go, a tip of the hat to all the folks at Rainbow Push Coalition. Our thoughts are with them tonight as they mourn the passing of their founder. Push has paid out more than $6 million in scholarships to students and helped hundreds find jobs. And that work continues. And that is The Point. I'm Taman Bradley. Micah and Ray are back with more news tonight at 9 o'clock. Up next on WGN Plus, The Forecasters. Good night.